to my channel. So just like I promised, this is my second video where I'm going to be talking a little bit about my writing. So I thought I would give you guys a little bit of backstory. Growing up, I've always been a really big reader. My mom used to read to me when I was little, and I used to be such a big reader that I used to daydream a lot, and I used to sneak books under my desk, and I would get in really big trouble with my teacher because I wasn't paying attention to the lesson, but I was reading under my desk. And for all you bookworms out there, I'm sure that you guys can relate. And I just always loved reading, and there was a point where in my life where I actually stopped reading for a while, and at that point, I believe I was in middle school, where I think the last books that I read were the Twilight series. And then I went through like this dry spell after the Twilight series. I don't know why it was. I don't know if it's because of the kind of books they were or whatever it was, but I just went through a dry spell. And in 7th grade, I had this teacher named Miss DeSilva. I went to Highland Oaks Middle School, and Miss DeSilva was a teacher she was one of my favorite teachers. English was one of my favorite classes. Well, she made English my favorite class because of that year. Because the year before, I had another teacher that was nice all the same, but she wasn't like resonating with me. But Miss DeSilva really made English fun and fresh. She played movies like old Hitchcock old Hitchcock movies and Twilight Zone little mini series in her class, and we would do like really cool projects, work with other people, and she just made English so enticing, and I came very close to her over that year. And she was really the one that kind of inspired me to write, because I guess she saw something in me when she would read my essays. And so she told me that I should write more. And she was the one that kind of brought it out of me. So I believe like when I got into 8th grade, I started writing like little short stories and stuff. I wish, like, and poems and stuff, I wish I kept them. I don't have records of them. But when I got into high school, I started writing stories. Just a backlash. Just to go back. The first time I started writing stories was when I was little, because I used to write little children's stories for my sister. I used to make them, and I would like, the Adventures of Peter Pan and like all these like different fairy tale characters, and I would do like alternate storylines, and that would be my stories to her. I think I did like 4 or 5 books for her, and that was something I really enjoyed doing. I used to tell her stories at night. So that's something that storytelling has always been something that I've been always like a passion of mine, something I've always enjoyed. In 9th grade, I started writing this chick lit story, which was called Vanderveer Ferns. And it's funny because if you guys are interested, I actually have the first 5 chapters uploaded on Wattpad, because it's actually on Wattpad. So I'll leave the link for it down below if you guys are interested. But it's still there. I think I wrote a fan fiction because I was a big One Directioner. So I wrote a One Direction fan fiction. I never finished that one. The novel I'm currently working on now, this one actually, I started getting ideas for this book my senior year of high school. So it came to me after I read The Great Gatsby, and it inspired me with this story. And I'm not going to tell you guys what it is because it's not finished and it's not copyrighted or anything, so I'm not going to disclose that to you guys. But eventually, once the whole publishing process starts and I'm done and it's edited, then I will tell you guys more information on the book. But yeah, I mean, The Great Gatsby really inspired me to write my novel, and I went from there. And I thought about it for a year before I actually sat down. We were in Switzerland because me and our family and my whole family, sorry, I cannot talk today. My family, we all traveled to Switzerland every, I think 6 years we go to Switzerland, because I have my aunt that lives there. And one night we were all just relaxing, drinking beer, and I got the sudden inspiration to sit down and write. And so that's what I did. I sat down and I started writing. And 2 years later, I'm still here, and I actually have 4 more chapters left to finish it. So I'm still kind of baffled at the realization. I mean, it's not even really 2 years yet, because August will be exactly 2 years that I started writing this novel. So I'm still amazed. I'm really, really surprised that this is something that is even happening at my age, because I'm only 21, that I'm writing a novel. That's crazy for me to even think about. But yeah, that's what's happening. I kind of wanted to just tell you guys a little bit of the background before I kind of go into really the content of this video. I really just wanted to tell you guys about my writing process, because I thought it would be really cool for anyone who's aspiring to write, or anyone who is a writer maybe. My process can help them if they're going through a little hitch, or if they're looking for some sort of way, like, oh, I really want to write a book, but I have an idea for one, but I don't know how to go about it. And I hear that a lot from, from other Instagram people on Instagram and on Facebook and everything. So I thought it would be really cool to kind of share with you guys my process. So from, like I told you before, when I started writing, I did not start writing right away. Okay, it started off as an idea. Okay, and usually that idea kind of came from a book I read, and it started as an inspiration. Okay, it's not like you replicate the plot exactly from the book. It's just, it sparks an idea, and then you write down that idea before you forget it. I kept thinking in my head, and I kept visualizing the story, thinking about different aspects of it, and I thought about it for a year before I actually started writing. I did not start writing right away. I wrote little ideas in a notebook. I drew story maps, like things like that, to kind of plan out, to kind of just get my story to have some teeth before I actually sat down and started writing. By the time I sat down and started writing my novel, I already had the full story. Like, I already had from what's going to happen from the beginning, the middle to end. It was just about creatively coming about telling it on paper, really. And that is a whole art in it. That's like a whole thing in itself, your writing form. But I think I will probably talk to you guys about that in another video. I will not talk about it here because it's going to take even make the video even longer. But once I started writing, I actually started to do research. This is when I started doing little in-depths of research. So I would write out, I would do a few chapters, and then when I would be stuck on a few chapters, I will go and do research. Now, it's not necessary for you to do research depending on what kind of genre, like what genre you are writing in, because I'm writing in historical fiction, so I do require a lot of research. And sometimes reading other books in between time where you're stuck kind of helps get the juices flowing, and then you could keep going. But like I said, I did have an outline, I did have a plan of the story, because it's very, very important, I think, to know your beginning, middle, and end if you want to remain, if you want your story to flow, that linear flow in your story. That's very, very important. I'm not saying you plan every aspect of it, but you do plan the major events and the major things that happen. You plan like the characters and things like that, the important, like the rising action, the climax, and the falling action, things like that, the major events. How you go about writing those things depends on, as you write, it will naturally come, and you can work with that. I'm trying to think of something else. Once I did the research, and I would add that into my story. I will input that into my story. I will change some lines. I would change some terms, even some ways that in terms of dialogue the characters were speaking. But it's really important to know that do not let your research impede on your story. That's the most important thing, because you are not writing an essay or a research paper. Sorry. but you are writing a story. And so you want to be, it depends on how, on the historical side, because I'm not speaking for every genre, but on the historical side, while it is important that you remain, that you try to be respectful of history and try to be respectful of that certain time period, you don't want it to put a cap on your story or your imagination, or for to in order to flourish. I think that's the most important thing that I can tell you guys to remember. The most important thing I think that you should know is that no idea is stupid. There's just undeveloped ideas. A lot of times I think we compare ourselves to things that have already been done. We think that, oh, everything good has been done already, so what can I bring new to the table? What can I create? And when you think that way, and when you compare yourself to other people, that's what's prohibiting you from being able to explore your capabilities and explore what you can do. And I think that that's something that is very disheartening, not only as a writer, but as an individual, because if you're someone that you compare yourself and say, there's no way I can do something like that, or say like, oh, I can't do that, because you're selling yourself short and you don't see your full potential. It's important that when you if you really want to write a book, if you really want to create a story, write it down, and write down that idea, think about it, let it jiggle in your head for a little bit. You don't have to rush and put everything up on paper, but you can start developing it and writing it and developing and working on it. And then once you feel that you have something to go on, you can start. That's why it helps to do an outline. But yeah, so that's kind of what I did, and now I'm almost done. It's just to let you guys know, for a lot of you probably are wondering like what's gonna happen after this. After this, I do start editing, and yeah, I mean that's pretty much the next step is editing and rewriting. Well, they call it rewrite, but it's really just editing. I mean, you're just, and then of course critiquing. You sometimes your most closest people in your circle, you can have them read your work and critique it. So that's kind of part of the editing process as well. That's what I do. It's really important that you guys know that this process that I just said works for me. And the only reason why I'm sharing it is that hopefully it can help you guys. But every writer has a different process, and doesn't mean that that process stays with you every time you write a novel. My process now might not be the same process I have 2-3 years ago when I write my next novel. It doesn't work that way. You do what works for you, and then it's different every time. It's a different experience. Also, another thing that helps is to find other people that have the same that are writers as well. It does help to bounce off ideas. Not to share your ideas for your novel per se, because you do have to be careful with how much you disclose to someone else, because you don't want to give your idea off to someone else. But it does help when you have if you have a literary friend, and you guys can bounce ideas off of different stories and themes and elements, and you get different perspectives, because that can feed your story as well. And that's something that can be said from every genre. But yeah, so hopefully you guys really enjoyed this video. I had so much fun talking about it with you guys. I'll make another video next time, I think more focused on writing form. Either writing form or character building. So yeah, so I will put that out there for you guys in probably a week or two. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated. But thank you guys so much for watching my channel. I hope you guys enjoy. Leave your comments below if you found if you found anything I said in this video helpful, or if what are your concerns about you know, have you always wanted to write a book? What are you afraid of? Or what has been your experience? Or if you have a writing process, share it down below. I'm all for improving my process as well. So anyway, yeah. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.